You're listening to the Travis Makes Money podcast presented by GoHighLevel.com. For a free 30-day trial of the best all-in-one digital marketing software tool on the planet, just go to GoHighLevel.com/Travis. Hey, what's going on, money makers? Welcome back to the Travis Makes Money podcast, where it's our mission to help you make more money. Today, we're going to be talking about entrepreneurship with my old friend and good friend, Shawn Dill. Shawn is a powerhouse entrepreneur and investor. He's built multiple seven-figure businesses across several different industries. As the owner of the Adaptable Entrepreneur, he helps service-based professionals scale with ease. He co-owns Well Infused, a wellness franchise, and founded the Specific Chiropractic Centers, a national chiropractic franchise. Shawn is also the owner of Book Yourself Solid, empowering entrepreneurs to get more clients and get booked solid. With a track record of scaling businesses to 7+ figures, Shawn brings unmatched expertise in building wealth through entrepreneurship and relationship capital. Shawn is no stranger to this show. He's been on, was on Build Your Network back when the show was called that a few years ago. I've been on their show recently that they recorded out of the wind with a mutual friend, Dave Meltzer. So I know this is going to be a fun conversation, but before we jump in, if you're wondering how I go about building the relationships that I have with the amazing people in my life, either on this show or on my other show, Travis Makes Friends, it's been through the podcast. The podcast itself is kind of the Trojan horse of connection. So if you're curious about how a podcast can benefit you and your circle over the next couple of years, and you're already running a successful business, then head over to travischappell.com/coaching. There's a quick application right there. See if we might be a good fit to work together to get your show out into the world. That's travischappell.com/coaching. Shawn Dill, what's up, dude? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I love that. You know what? You were recently on our podcast, so just a quick little piece on that. I always say, and listen, you are a master at helping people to bring their podcast to more people. A lot of people always ask me like about metrics on our podcast. Our podcast is called None of Your Business. And I always tell them, I don't know the metrics. That's not why we do the podcast. And I love that. Travis Makes Friends. We do the podcast because it creates opportunities like this.
Yeah.
You have to at least have a legitimate podcast, but then people will come. I mean, we're extremely blessed. We record out of SoFi in Los Angeles, or we record out in Las Vegas. So we attract some pretty amazing guests like yourself. And that's basically like a 30-minute opportunity. Like rather than have coffee meeting, let's get on a podcast and let's record cool stuff. And then oftentimes following that, we're able to develop a relationship and go deeper and do collaborations and even make money together on different ventures just coming out of that. So I just want to encourage everyone before we even get started, you got to hit that link. If you don't have a podcast in your repertoire, it is one of the easiest ways. And for someone like me, I'm an introvert. I don't love networking, not my favorite thing to do, but I love having conversations like this. This is way easier for me. And we get so much business development out of the podcast. Again, hit that link, apply, let Travis help you to launch your podcast. Everyone has a podcast inside of them.
Yeah, just shoot me your PayPal link so I can send you the money that we agreed on for that promo. No, I appreciate you saying that, dude. Because,
run that curtain on every show.
yeah, because I think people can, like, they see what I do in podcasting and they're kind of like, well, I'm not a podcast. I'm not you. Like, I'm not a creator. I'm not a podcaster. I have these two businesses, these three businesses, or my primary business, and this is what I do. I don't have time to. So I love hearing it from somebody like yourself who's running brick and mortar businesses that you're building a national chiropractic franchise, to know that this is still a completely valid and useful part of what I do with my time. Not just because of audience. And frankly, I don't even care about the audience. I don't even look at the numbers. I don't know the numbers. None of that matters to me. It's really just about the relationships. And that's kind of my message, man. Is it's like, it doesn't matter if relationships, if you're going to be doing whatever it is that you're doing for any longer than the next 12 months, then having a podcast that has something to do with the thing that you're doing is going to bring you long-term success. I promise you. I don't know to what degree. I don't know how exactly it'll work, but I do know it's the perfect platform for engineering serendipity and making it happen more often in your life. It's an opportunity attractor. So I appreciate you saying that right at the top of the conversation. Let's dive into some money things here, Shawn. Tell me, first of all, how did you make your first dollar and how did you make your most recent dollar?
Well, I guess my first dollar ever, mowing yards, I think is what I would say.
Yes.
My parents' lawnmower and going across to the neighbor and asking if they needed their yard mowed. I think professionally, I'm a chiropractor by profession. So I went to school to become a chiropractor, and then when I graduated from chiropractic college, I moved immediately. I was only 24, and 24-year-olds, we know everything.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
we don't need to be told anything. So I
Lucky
made the
for us.
wise I made the wise decision to just move to Costa Rica. I didn't speak Spanish, and I was a chiropractor, and they didn't have chiropractic there, and so it was rough. But that professionally, I did make at least a dollar. In my first year, it was really, really, really rough. I contemplated coming home back to the United States. And thankfully, some little voice told me to stay. And, I guess I had that entrepreneurship bug where I knew, we signed up for hard things.
Hmm.
And year two was amazing. And then it was just kind of like took off from there.
So
I
you went
guess if I,
directly into entrepreneurship from school.
yeah, well, I mean, that's an interesting thing. That's one of my passions, right? Is that, we work exclusively with service providers. And the world's greatest service providers live in relative obscurity simply because they do not embrace the concepts of entrepreneurship. They wish, like, we go back to podcasting, I mean, if we look at the top ranking podcasts, those aren't necessarily the best podcasts.
Right.
They're the most listened to podcasts. Probably the best podcast, the most interesting people, the most skilled podcasters. Nobody knows who they are. Why? Because they're not embracing marketing, sales, right? If you have a gift and you don't share it, nobody will know. So I got thrown into it and kind of trial by fire. Listen, at the end of my first year, I was dead broke,
Yeah.
living in a third world country. I didn't have enough money over the last 2 weeks of the year, which basically Costa Rica shuts down for the month of December for all of the holidays. I had no way to even make income. I had to get by the last 2 weeks of my very first year in business. I had one bag of rice and one bag of beans, and
Wow.
I had to stretch that out for 2 weeks just so that when January came, people would start coming back in to see me as their chiropractor. So I had to learn it. I mean, otherwise I was going to starve or I was going to come back to the States and take a normal job.
Yeah.
So I got forced into it. But you asked my last dollar. I think like right before here, I was at our newest concept, our brick and mortar called Well Infused. So my last dollar made would have been in the health and wellness longevity space. So Well Infused specializes in regenerative therapies, bioidentical hormones, IVs, functional medicine, things like that. Everything that I'm involved in, my cause is natural health care. So I want to see people learn that we have health within us. And I want people to be able to express that. And then on the other side, on our coaching and consulting side, I also do believe that we have success and abundance within us, but we just do things to interfere with that, tell ourselves stories, make bad decisions, etc. But we were not made or created to be sick, and we were not made or created to be poor.
Hmm. Why chiropractic for you? You seemed to have complete clarity that this was the direction that you were going to go down, and then you accomplished the mission of becoming a professional, and then immediately moved directly into starting your own clinic. Why this direction? What inside of you made you curious about chiropractic school?
First of all, shout out to my cousin, Steve Hernandez. He was a chiropractor. He's since passed away. I'm very thankful that he got to see me as a chiropractor. He came to Costa Rica and visited and saw my clinic there, and then eventually was hit with pancreatic cancer and passed away rather quickly.
Wow.
He got me into chiropractic. Literally, I loved him and I loved the success and the impact that he was making. But before I was 24 and really wise, I was 17, graduated high school, went to Indiana University and was having a ton of fun. And I was like, I'm just going to stay here and, I'll get a degree in something. And my cousin actually flew from Milwaukee to Bloomington, Indiana and picked me up. and basically took me out for a day on his plane. He had a plane and took me and said, "Get your act together." And I ended up then deciding that I was going to go ahead and forego my last year of, because I had done all my prereqs. So I was just screwing around. Then went to chiropractic college, ended up in Costa Rica. And the answer to the question really is, so one, on the human side, my cousin. Secondly, energetically, there's an alignment. I really honestly believe what I stand for is a world where health and success are known as fundamental truths rather than fundamental pursuits. And I discovered in chiropractic the mechanism, the vehicle that would allow us to feel and observe our full life expression of what we were actually created to be.
There are a lot of people who graduate chiropractic school. There's no shortage of chiropractors. It seems like, anyway, I'm from my perspective as an outsider. What separates those who make a successful clinic versus the countless examples of people who don't?
I am the past, full disclaimer, I'm the past chair of the board of trustees at Sherman College of Chiropractic. Having said that, that is not where I graduated from. I graduated from Logan University in Chesterfield, Missouri. It's a lot like, the way that we are raised when we are young gives a lot of us an advantage in life. And it's not necessarily a monetary advantage. It's the things that we are taught, the philosophies, the ethics, the discipline. Those are the things that set us up for success later in life. I feel like when you speak to chiropractors, it has an awful lot to do with the education. So if you were taught that chiropractic is nothing but a substitute for a physical substitute for aspirin and can help things like neck pain and back pain, I think you have a difficult time because, listen, there's very few things out there that work better than pharmaceuticals. I mean, so no, you're not, you're going to have a difficult time. If you were taught early the philosophy of chiropractic, that health comes from within, that we are born as self-healing organisms and that we just need no interference, well, that's something that nobody else can offer on the planet. And so if you understand that because you have the proper upbringing, you're set up for success. And then you just have to find, and it take a little bit of luck. Yeah, I've been lucky as well. You've got to find that business acumen. You've got to run into people that will help you to market and sell so that you can reach the audience that you were meant to reach.
Yeah, and a lot of these, that's why I like that you do consulting for these more service type companies, because typically anybody in these types of fields, they don't get into it because they're obsessive entrepreneurs or business people. It's because they're really good at the thing that they do, whether it's chiropractic or a wellness clinician or plumbing or HVAC or solar or whatever it is. They know this one thing really well. And then they jump into business expecting that people are just going to find them. And kind of what we alluded to the beginning of this is that there's plenty of examples of people that are not as good as you are, that are doing better than you are because they learned skills that you refuse to learn. That expression, best known beats best. So what are a couple of the unavoidable skills or verticals that one needs to improve at, whether it's chiropractic, any sort of service-based business owner?
First of all, I think it's just getting really clear about who you are meant to serve. One of the dangers in service businesses is that we want to serve everyone. To go back to our initial conversation about podcasting, you can't have a podcast that's just about everything for everybody. Your podcast is making money. So, yeah, but what about baking cakes? Well, that's not what we're here to talk about, right? And that's okay. So you've got to figure out who you serve first. Dentists would say something like anybody with teeth, well, but that's not true. They've got to have money. They have to have geographical proximity. There's a lot of things that we can begin to dial in who we serve. Next, we have to know what we help them do. And it's not enough to say, I'm a dentist. One of the things that we always teach on is, and we've all experienced this where, I play a lot of golf and somebody will say to me like, what do you do? That's the worst question on a golf course. But you know what's worse than that is answering with your profession. So they're like, what do you do? And I say, oh, I'm a chiropractor. And they go, Oh, and then they say something dumb like, oh, good thing I don't need my neck cracked. And it doesn't matter what you say, it's their preconceived notions about what it is. So I've got to get really clear about what result that I bring to the world. I could say something like, I help people live a pain-free and healthy lifestyle by removing interferences to the natural inborn expression of health within. And then they have the opportunity to say, like, oh, well, how do you do that? What is that? Versus just leading with my profession. I think that the next thing is you have to understand the value that you bring. It's a value proposition. People in the service world are really shy about charging, right? They're
Hmm.
like they'd give it away if they could, which is great because we have a really big service heart. But the service hand and the business hand can never get together. We got to
Yeah.
run a business and we have to serve humanity with whatever it is that we're putting out there into the world. And the last thing that I think is, and it goes even to that same thing of, some of these cliches out there, you need relationship capital in 2025. It really isn't just, they say it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's actually who knows what you know and do they like you? So it is super important. This opportunity for me, I don't take for granted. It is because I have a relationship with you. And I would think that the reason why you would extend an invite is because in our interactions, you liked me. That is critical because there's probably a lot of other people like me who are not on the show. And they're wondering, like, well, why am I not on the show? Well, because you don't have the relationship with Travis that you need in order to get there. And again, you're not picking me because you vetted me and felt like I was the best person to bring on the show. While you probably had some of that, it is largely based on our relationship.
Yeah. 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 That I knew that regardless of where the conversation went, we'd have a good conversation because I know that you know your stuff and that you are a podcaster and that we would be able to jump on and talk about anything and still have fun doing it. you know, tell me about the personal finance side, Shawn. Being an entrepreneur is really risky. And you kind of alluded to it earlier about the stretch where you were living on a bag of beans, a bag of rice. What type of personal financial sacrifices were required for you to be able to build these types of national businesses?
Well, that was the first stretch, by the way, when I was living on a bag of beans and a bag of rice. Um, Entrepreneurs typically have a high level of risk tolerance. We take all the risk because we know on the backside we get the majority of the glory. It does take people, other people. In fact, I would say you cannot win this game alone. We're not in entrepreneurship playing a singles game, so it is unlike golf. This is a team sport. It does require those relationships, and even on your own team, people that are making things happen. A great team of intrapreneurs who they don't want the risk, but they love the upside is incredibly valuable to have on your team as well. Just over time, the more success you have, it just sets the bar higher and elevates the size of the problems. So when I had only a bag of rice and a bag of beans to my name, I would have done anything for a hamburger. So I only needed like $5 and I would have been like, I would have thought this is amazing.
Yeah.
There are other moments in life where I needed a couple $1,000s. And then you start to enter into other bigger ventures. And then you need a couple $1,000s and eventually $1 million or a couple $1 million. It's the same game. It's just the size of the bag is getting bigger.
Yeah.
And that's why you see these entrepreneurs find success because the bigger the size of the risk, the bigger the upside it is for them. And once they've learned how to navigate that risk, then they are able to conquer the world.
Yeah. The principles are the same regardless.
Right.
So tell me about your like investment stuff. You get a lot of money coming in from the businesses. Are you somebody who's just plowing everything back into this business or starting a new venture or things like that? Or do you have, hey, I'm putting money into real estate or I got some crypto here or I got some stocks here. I have my 401k. Like, how do you manage personal finances when they come in the door?
Yeah, I think that in my business, in coaching and consulting, in fact, just yesterday I was talking with a CPA that I had met recently, and we were talking about collaborative relationships. And so it's inherent in my business that as I coach entrepreneurs, I create problems They're good problems to have, but they're problems. The first problem comes around with taxes. Right. So once you start making money, when you're not making money, you don't know anything about taxes and it's not a big deal. Then all of a sudden you have your first really good year and you're shocked at how much you owe because you didn't have any thought or strategy around it. I think that most entrepreneurs fall into, and you mentioned them, and I think that's because of the people that you are around fall into those baskets where we have a mix of conservative and aggressive investments, but probably the number one investment for entrepreneurs is real estate. Why? Because of the tax implications. One of the only asset classes that we can depreciate on our tax return while the asset is appreciating in value. So yes, my wife and I are involved in several real estate investments, both from a single family. We don't have any multifamily other than through like syndicates, friends that have put together deals and we're investing through them. I couldn't even imagine trying to run that myself. I will say this one thing that I do disagree with about real estate. And I caution people because there are many books that are written about the topic where they call this passive income. When you are getting started, there's nothing passive about it. And when you're trying to run this business and you have your sleeves rolled up and you're trying to do this, and then all of a sudden you're like, they told me to get into real estate and now the hot water heater is broken, you have to figure that out. There's a lot of active things to do on that side of the fence. And then, of course, because we're entrepreneurs, we love things like cryptocurrency because it has a high risk ceiling, right? We love that stuff. But I caution people, our good friend Dave Meltzer talks about timing and risk tolerance. Know your timing and risk tolerance. I'm 53 years old. So I've had to intellectually begin to understand that I need to tone back a little my risk tolerance because as you get older, you have less runway. And so, yes, I do love, we have our 401k, we have our traditional investments. And then, of course, the last one for that we participate in that most entrepreneurs do, your whole life insurance, your infinite banking and all of that as well.
Yeah, on the real estate side, I'm glad you said that. Anybody trying to sell you passive income is trying to sell you something else. Like they got a program, they got a course, they got something that they're trying to sell you. Passive income is a myth, and not forever. At some point, obviously, the goal is that all of it's coming in passively. But when you're getting started in anything, regardless of if it's a franchise, if it's real estate, whatever it is that you're trying to set yourself up for as a wealth building vehicle that you're going to park money into, it's going to require work at the outset, because at least just to learn about the industry. It's like, yeah, maybe your real estate portfolio could be somewhat passive if you're buying a turnkey property and you have property managers in place and you know the market pretty well. But there's a lot of learning that goes into knowing all of those things so that you don't make a bad decision on the buy side before you end up upside down on a property. Like there's still a lot of things that are going to require your active attention. But the good news is that potentially in the future, it could be relatively passive, like 99% passive, where maybe you just take a look at the portfolio and have a meeting with your property manager once a quarter or something like that. But yeah, the idea of passive income is a myth. And if you don't have, I mean, if you don't have a minimum of 50 grand or 100 grand in the bank, I wouldn't even really be thinking about some of these other ways to invest. I would be thinking more about how you can invest that money back into yourself, your skills, your knowledge, your network, to increase your ability to earn income so that you can save up more money and actually really invest in those deals. But I appreciate you coming on the show, man. Let's say this. Let's say tomorrow everything gets shut down. You lose everything that you're working on right now. What would you do this year to make money?
Well, that's a great question. And I always tell people, even preemptively, one, because we have such a high risk tolerance, that for most entrepreneurs is not a scary thing to contemplate. But I would say this, I would need my phone.
Hmm.
I always tell people, you could take everything away from me, but not my phone. Like I would fight to the death
Yeah.
to keep my phone.
It's
Why?
like Bear
Because
Grylls and his knife,
right. So my contacts, I just start making phone calls. I would call you and say like, hey man, maybe I have a podcast. Maybe I could help some of your overflow. Maybe I could help out on your shows. Maybe I could help with bookings. I mean, there's so many things. One of the things that I've learned as well is learning how to sell against other people's stuff. And I had mentioned him earlier, David Meltzer. He and I have a beautiful relationship that's based a lot on that because that way we don't have to have two different things. We're very close friends, but if he's doing something, I'll frequently just call and say, "Hey, like, could I sell that to my people? And then, what is your bottom line? And maybe I can add on a little bit there, and but then I'll just send them there, and I won't do anything.
Yeah.
And so I could just find people that have cool stuff going on and just say like, hey, could I sell against that? And I won't have to do any work. And that would get me the money to kind of get back in the game and figure out what I wanted to do next.
Yeah. The thing I want to point out there is that you would use the skill of selling to generate income, to make sure your bills are paid, and have a little bit of leftover to attack something new that you're going to try. Um, I like to point that out because there's, economies go up and down, and business models go in and out, and get saturated and get less saturated, and there's a lot of external factors that will go into what your bank account balance looks like on a particular year. But knowledge, skill sets, and connections will never be taken away from you. So it's why it's always really important to make sure that you're continually reinvesting into those things, even if it is a financial investment, not just a time investment. It's always an investment of energy. Sure, it's always an investment of time, but even financial investments, to make sure that you're consistently, constantly, persistently working on making yourself a more valuable person to know. And that comes back down to, what's your skill? How does your skill help solve a problem? And do you have people whose problems you could solve with that skill? And if you have those things, then you're never gonna worry about if food's going to be on the table. Like I said, there could be some major external factor, like some government regulation that shuts your business down or something. Some of those things are out of our control. But if you have those things on lock, like I said, you'll never go hungry. So, Shawn, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. Let's move into the last segment here. Just some quick random questions, quick random answers. We'll get you out of here.
Sweet.
What profession other than your own do you think that it would have been fun to master?
Lawyer.
Flex and fail, Shawn. Give me a purchase that you've made that you're stoked about, and a purchase that you made that you're not so stoked about.
Ooh. Gosh. We bought this house that I'm currently in Naples, Florida, on the internet. We had never been to Naples, and what a home run. I love the
Wow.
place. I love Naples. We are now moving to be here full time. So that was great. And it was being built. So the day that we took possession of this house, it was worth double what was on our contract. So
Wow.
that was a flex that I absolutely love. One that I wish I hadn't done. Um, well, there was a run, I think, during the end of the last Trump administration, going COVID, money's flowing. There were a couple of real estate investments, single family houses that, particularly here in Naples, and again, you mentioned it, that I just fell into the trap. But Naples operates differently because it's so seasonal. So nobody rents the whole time. And then because during the time that they're here, you get egregious rents and then it sits empty. And then you got to hustle. And that's where that not so passive part comes in, because then you got to find the next people. And it feels like it's constantly turning over. I recently put our one of our Naples single family condos that I have found exceedingly difficult to rent. I just put that one on the market. Um, Thankfully, it's not cutting losses, but it didn't go how I would have wanted it to.
If you could sit on a park bench with someone, past or present, and chat for an hour, who would it be?
B.J. Palmer, Bartlett Joshua Palmer, the developer of chiropractic. Um, and for all entrepreneurs, there's some really interesting entrepreneurs out there. I want to encourage everybody to just check him out. He owned a radio station and then subsequently television station. He owned rights to cable television west of the Mississippi, died in 1961 with a net worth of $60 million. Great friends with people like Albert Einstein, very influential person, but he developed this thing called chiropractic. So to me, that's super interesting.
How do you like to consume information best? Books, audiobooks, blogs, podcasts, YouTube videos?
All of them. I have said for many years that I am nothing but a content curator. I love to consume all kinds of information. I listen, I read. I usually dedicate about 60 to 90 minutes a day in the morning to just going through, whether it's podcasts or reading from a book or listening to an audiobook. I just try and consume information so that I can share it. I think that there's very few original ideas anymore in today's world. The name of the game is how fast can we consume information? And now there's AI. So AI has changed the game. The amount of information that the world has at their fingertips is insane, but that doesn't mean that all the information is good. So whoever can serve as sort of as an arbiter of the good information, the useful, I'm not judging it good or bad, but useful in a certain context, that's where I believe the riches lie.
Tell me one of your favorite books.
I'm going to go with, again with the chiropractic book. It's called The Chiropractic Textbook, written by R.W. Stevenson. Love that book. Latest book, of course, everybody's talking about the Walter Isaacson, Elon Musk book. That was super inspirational. Love that one. I would go with that currently for a current read. That's where I would go.
What is your go-to pump-up song, Shawn?
Gosh, I love a lot of Dave Matthews. I love to see Dave Matthews live, but that's not necessarily like super pumped up. I'm going to go right now with Turn the TV Off, but it has to have my boy Lefty Gunplay, my favorite line, scary, spooky, crazy, hilarious. I love that part of the song.
What is something that you are not very good at?
Being patient. Not very good at that at all.
Well, as we get everything wrapped up here, Shawn, where can people go to get more from you?
Hit me up on social media. Social media is key for everybody. At Dr. Shawn Dill, ShawnDill. Shoot me an email, Shawn at adaptapreneur.com. Somebody just sent me an email from a podcast that I was on like a year ago. Somebody sent me an email and said, "Hey, I loved what you guys talked about. I'd love to have a conversation." I am an open book here and happy to talk to anybody.
At Dr. Shawn, Shawn Dill, Dill. Go hit him up. Tell him you heard about him here on the show. Shawn, thanks so much for spending some time with us. I know your time is really valuable, so I do not take that for granted. Everybody else listening, tuning in, remember, money only solves your money problems. But it's a little bit easier to solve the rest of those problems if you got some money in the bank. So let's solve that problem first here on the Travis Makes Money podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time. Peace out.